Greetings, friends, fellow patriots, fellow citizens, and welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention Weekly News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and I'm the host of this podcast. I'm also the president of the We the People Convention organization. And this podcast and our website at wethepeopleconvention.org and our text messages and emails that you should be receiving that you can sign up for at wethepeopleconvention.org, and our donations to other conservative groups like True the Vote and ACLJ and Project Veritas and OMG and on and on and on, Julie Kelly, etc. Those are all paid for by the generous donations of the donors to the We the People Convention. And if you have been a donor for a few weeks, a few months, or a few years, we thank all of you for your generous donations that help us continue to pursue the mission we have of protecting and defending your and my individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Thank you so much to our donors. If you have the means to do so, please go to wethepeopleconvention.org. Click on the donate link and give what you can. We'd greatly appreciate it. And I do want to thank the new donors we've been getting lately. We appreciate you very much for deciding that we are worthy of your support. Thanks to you guys and to everyone who's given for so many years. So this podcast this week is going to have a lot more videos than I usually have, which I think many of you will appreciate. Sometimes just talking, without videos is not enough of a break. And there's just lots of important news. But the most important thing is that I want you to continue to see that we are in a counter-revolution, that President Trump is leading the counter-revolution, and that we must defeat the communist left, which is trying to destroy us. And the evidence of that is going to be really clear in this podcast. So you're going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's plenty of all of it, but you're going to see with clear eyes, and that's what you need to have if you're going to defend yourself, right? You got to recognize your enemy, their strengths, their weaknesses. You've got to be honest about your strengths and weaknesses, and you've got to be ready and willing to engage in the fight for liberty. It's not free. Freedom is not free. It has to be defended. That's why you're watching this podcast, and that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to report the weekly news, but we're also going to talk about things you can do and that you have done that will make a difference in our world. So let's get right into it. The big thing this week was the assault on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The Senate basically wants to get rid of him. And, they held this hearing that just was just a brawl. But we were so proud to have Kennedy just punching back, not taking any of their lies, just calling them out. And I'll give evidence of that here in a second. But it's so critical because we're exposing them for doing what? Trying to kill us, for not keeping us safe, by closing our borders, defending ourselves, having a strong military, not keeping us healthy by regulating the food industry and the chemical industry and the pharmaceutical industry. No. They've taken checks. They've been bribed to use those things against us. And nothing was more, that was never more apparent than in the hearing that happened with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the head of the HHS. RFK Jr. just walked into Congress and took down the biggest critics in one fell swoop. This was a masterclass. Elizabeth Warren erupted over Kennedy taking COVID vaccines away, only to have her hear him say that she got $855,000 in pharma bucks donated to her. That's when Bernie Sanders made a fatal error. He blurted out that nearly every politician is taking farmer dollars, if that is somehow an excuse for Warren himself and his colleagues. It was unbelievable. I wrote on X, we posted a video on X, You can see our post at TomZWTPC at x.com, and it's on our webpage at wethepeopleconvention.org. On this article, I posted Jesse Waters' excellent opening to his show. I said, excellent opening segment by Jesse Waters. He tells it like it is. All these experts we paid in our government sick care system destroyed our health our entire lives. The commie Dems want to protect them. We shouldn't change anything, they scream. They did such a good job of making the drug and chemical companies and the politicians and doctors and hospital administrators rich by making and keeping us sick. Share this. So go to wethepeopleconvention.org and use the share links on that page to share this story, and you'll see Jesse Waters' opening segment, which it was like 7 minutes, so I'm not going to play it here. For the past weeks, Democrats have been mounting pressure to get RFK Jr. to resign. They hoped this hearing would be their chance to make it happen, but things did not go as planned. Right out of the gate, Kennedy announced that the CDC will be cleaning house, removing the health officials responsible for the catastrophic COVID failures. The people at a CDC, Kennedy said, who put masks on children, who close our schools, are the people who will be leaving, and they're leaving in droves. Thank you. Moments later, Kennedy articulated further exactly why he's cleaning house. He grew emotional and dropped a harrowing statistic that brought the room to silence. This morning, Kennedy said, I got the latest numbers from the CDC that 76.4% of all Americans now have chronic disease. All of us have been made sick intentionally, okay? This is stunning. When my uncle was president, it was 11%. In 1950, it was 3%. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy. I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again. What a concept, huh? Fire the people who failed? Oh, but you can't do that. Oh, you're a charlatan. You're going to kill people. Yeah. So here's just one clip that I thought, really spells out the hypocrisy. Well, watch this.
Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing. You never asked the question why it's happening. Why is this happening? Today, for the first time in 20 years, we learned that infant mortality has increased in our country. It's not because I came in here. It's because of what happened during the Biden administration that we're going to end.
There it is. You sat in that chair and did nothing except take checks from Big Pharma and Big Ag, okay, and the hospital associations and the insurance companies. You sold us out, and he's calling you out, and you don't like it one bit. And you think, oh, we're going to, the one senator said, how many Americans were killed by COVID? And RFK Jr. rightfully answered, I don't know. You don't know. How can you be the head of, Health and Human Services and not know how people were killed by COVID? He said, because the data isn't there. Because when COVID was going on, you were counting people hit by cars as dying from COVID. So we don't know. Oh, this is unbelievable. You should be fired for this incompetence. That's their news clip. That's what they're going to try to put in commercials for the 2026 election to try to get rid of us, to stop us from exposing them. And it's just not going to work because you could see right through it. And it's been interesting on X. That's where I post mostly. We're on Getter and Gab and MeWe and Facebook and YouTube and a bunch of other things. But I mostly post on X because that's where the news is really happening in our country today. And so if you go there, you'll see the left, he's canceling vaccinations because he's a cynic. No, he said right in the hearings, if you can't prove the efficacy of a drug, we're not going to promote it. But they're making billions on these drugs. And I don't just mean the pharmaceutical companies. I don't just mean the doctors in the hospitals. I mean the politicians. The politicians are making the money that make you sick and killed your mother or grandmother during COVID. That's the fact. So it's not going to work. And, bottom line is, Fox had this poll, Robert Kennedy's job performance, 52% approve, 33% disapprove, and 15% have no opinion. Okay? Robert F. Kennedy is going to be one of the most significant people in this administration. Years from now, the changes that Kennedy made of finally opening up our eyes like we've been asleep for 50, 60, 70 years. Trust the experts. Oh, they won't hurt you. That's all they were doing is hurting you. Trust the science. There was no science. These people, Kennedy is exposing that these people in the CDC and the FDA were cooking the books, were lying. There was no science. That's going to be the legacy, one of the main legacies of the Trump legacy 50 years from now, 100 years from now. It's affecting all of us. And you need to share that segment, that story on our website with people so they don't understand. But it's things like that he's just doing every day. Like he took COVID off the required vaccine list, last week. And he's doing all kinds of other reforms, by cleaning up the boards and the people that advise the government about healthcare. This is not a small thing. I think this will resonate with many of you, but you probably didn't hear this anywhere else. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announces the end to information blocking of medical records. Now, I know many of you have had problems like this, like we have. Some of the biggest health industry news has dropped in the past week, which is no doubt why we Americans are being distracted by former Centers for Disease Control and Prevention directors and rogue Health and Human Services staffers mounting a smear campaign against HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The Cures Act was passed by Congress in 2016 during the Obama administration. The act included provisions against information blocking, where providers and healthcare systems prevent patients from having access to their medical data or would not allow the patient's data to be shared with other providers, even a close relative or caregiver, right? They would cite HIPAA and all this crap. It's garbage. When the patient was provided a waiver. However, between powerful medical lobbying arms and the COVID pandemic, further clarification and enforcement of this act were stymied and delayed. Thus, information blocking continues to this day. Okay? Robert Kennedy said this week, this is 2025, nearly 10 years after Congress passed the Cures Act. Patients should be able to access their healthcare information on their phones, on their computers. They should be able to share that information with their doctors, their hospitals, researchers of their own trust, their own choice, and trusted relatives. After all, it's your data, and you should be able to control your information, and you will be able to do so under the new HHS. Now, again, that may seem like a small thing, except for when you're the one who's trying to get these medical records to take to another doctor to get a second opinion that they don't approve of, right? This is what they did to us. That's not transparency. That's not healthcare. That's not trying to help me. That's trying to hurt me. Yeah, that's why you voted for Donald Trump. That's why Maha voted for Donald Trump, so he would appoint Robert F. Kennedy Jr., so that he would do these things that he's been wanting to do for his whole life, for 40 years. And no one, don't doubt me, no one has the ability, the expertise. No one on this planet could have sat in that Senate hearing and done what he did to combat the lies, because he knows it all like the back of his hand, because he's been fighting it forever. And he has a passion to destroy these people he's known about for 40 years. That's why this is going to be a big part of the 2026 election, because Maha isn't just MAGA. Maha is independents and Democrats, and this is like their greatest dream realized. They can't believe that they're finally getting these things they knew had to be done 30 years ago. And they're going to fight like hell in 2026 to make sure that the Dems don't win the House and the Senate or one or the other to stop this. And that's no small thing. That's no small thing. So it was a big deal. And even Trump, this was pretty surprising, okay? Trump strikes skeptical tone on his own COVID vaccine record policies. For years, Trump has been at odds with his base, who largely oppose the widespread use and coercion associated with the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, he's reevaluating his past policies and statements. President Trump on Monday shot holes in the COVID-19 vaccine accomplishments of his first term, posting on Truth Social that they, Pfizer, show me great numbers and results, but they don't seem to be showing them to many others. I want them to show them now to the CDC and the public and clear up this mess one way or the other. I hope, he said, I hope Operation Warp Speed was as brilliant as many say it was. If not, we all want to know about it. And Pfizer hasn't been able to come up with it. See? And those of us, who love President Trump and respect him, we are not the cult the left was for Obama and is for their ideology. We call President Trump out when we think he's wrong. We did that, with the 600,000 Chinese students just 2 weeks ago. And we've been saying Operation Warp Speed was a psyop. The pharmaceutical companies trapped the president, lied to him, scared him by saying how many millions would die if he just didn't order these things. They lied. And people can be fooled by lies. But now President Trump is finally saying, put up or shut up. That's what RFK Jr. is saying, right? Put up or shut up. Doesn't look like you're going to put up. And then the thing just keeps blowing up, because as we look at it, as we finally can have some science, the evidence of, the damage done, the deaths caused by the vaccine are unbelievable. And the lies about ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and other things we could have done. The lies about the mask, and Kennedy talked about, they lied about everything. They lied about the mask. They lied about 6 feet distance. They lied about closing the schools. They lied about everything. But if they would have been honest, there were answers that could have saved lives that they forced us to not talk about. Here's one. As Dems attack RFK Jr. about vaccines, new study shows nasal spray can stop COVID. I'm not kidding. It's on our website. You can read it. For years, Americans were told their only hope was to roll up their sleeves for Pfizer, Moderna, and the rest of the vaccine cartel. However, a peer-reviewed study out of Germany now shows that a cheap, decades-old nasal spray, Azelastine, A-Z-E-L-A-S-T-I-N-E, Azelastine, may do what so-called miracle experimental COVID jabs never accomplished, and that is stop the COVID infection. According to new findings published in the JAMA Internal Medicine this week, all it may have taken to block infections was a $10 bottle of over-the-counter nasal spray used for seasonal allergies. Researchers in Saarland University Hospital in Germany ran a phase 2 double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial on 450 healthy adults between March 2023 and July 2024. The results were that infections in the placebo group were 6.7%. Infections in the Azelastine, test group was only 2.2%. That's a 67% reduction in the risk of infection. Compared that to the COVID shots, expensive, rushed, mandated, and not now known to have diminishing efficacy against variants and side effects. Vaccines were pitched as our salvation, but couldn't stop infections or transmission. And remember, they told us, you take the vaccine, you won't get COVID, and you won't spread it. Both were absolute lies, and they knew it. There's a video on X I just saw this morning of Walensky, the one doctor on TV, saying those exact words And now there's evidence that she knew before she went on TV that those were lies. Okay? Yet a cheap generic nasal spray, already FDA approved for allergies, outperformed them in head-to-head prevention trials. Never again, folks, we can never again allow, for the science to be ignored, for the doctors to be silenced, for people to say, you're not allowed to question. Never again. And those of you who didn't question, and I know there's not many of you watching this show that didn't question, but for your relatives and the people you know who just said, oh no, they wouldn't lie to us, just do what they say, wear the mask, stay 6 feet apart, close your business, learn your lesson. Learn your lesson. Watch this podcast. Share that story using our chapters player. You can actually take a link to just that story about the nasal spray and share it with your relatives, because never again, we can never allow this to happen again. Okay? And then this is awesome. Okay? Just awesome. Florida to end all vaccine mandates. The announcement was made by Florida Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo on September 3rd. So Florida is now saying, and what Kennedy's saying, they're saying, oh, you're stopping people from getting the vaccine. Kennedy, when he said COVID's off the list of required vaccines, he says anyone that needs it, wants it, can get it. He's not stopping anybody from getting anything. He's not requiring it. That's an important point. If you believe in freedom and liberty and individual prosperity, that's what this podcast is about. So what did Florida do and why? Florida Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo, Ladapo, announced on September 3rd that he was working to eliminate all vaccine mandates from state law. The Florida Department of Health, in partnership with the governor, is going to be working to end all vaccine mandates. Who am I as government or anyone else, or who am I as a man standing here now to tell you what you should put in your body? Who am I to tell you what your child should put in their body? I don't have that right. Your body is a gift from God. What you put into your body is because of your relationship with your body and your God. The Surgeon General reiterated that neither he nor the government had the right to force vaccines upon people and urged those listening to take that power away from the government and make their own informed decisions. Wow. How's that for individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity? How's that for living up to what America is all about, your right to make the decisions about your life? But he says, informed decisions. That means you've got to have freedom of speech. That means you've got to have all sides be able to, air their questions. We didn't do that. Our government was weaponized against us and in favor of the Faucis of the world, who were criminals, who killed people, including your relatives and mine, for money. Okay? But what Florida did, every state should do. You can recommend child vaccines, then put out the information. As RFK Jr. is saying, just show us the studies. They didn't have them for COVID, folks. They didn't have them. That's just the reality. Okay, so now let's move on to, the next big story of the week. And this is, and I told you, the Maha issue is going to be huge in 2026. Immigration is going to be huge in 2026. It's the big driver. But baby, Trump has now opened up a new issue that is going to resonate like none other. Chicago had, it says here in this slide in our story, 35 shots and 5 dead this weekend. It was like 75 people were shot in Chicago over Labor Day weekend, and 7 were dead, and Trump was having enough of it. He was done. When Donald Trump says he wants to clean up Americans' crime-ridden cities, the left instantly screams, authoritarian dictator. It's the same tired playbook they've been used since his first term about pretty much anything he's done, lying to frame any bold action as some sinister plot for power instead of a quest to do what the hell's right. Close the border, it hurts us. Stop killing black people in cities. Whoa, wow, how racist that is. Case in point, last month, a coalition of 19 Democratic governors issued one of the most hysterical joint statements you'll ever read, claiming the president's crime-fighting proposals were an attack on blue states. They huffed that sending in the National Guard without a governor's permission would be an alarming abuse of power, and insisted Trump was undermining the military. Illinois Governor Pritzker was even more dramatic, accusing Trump of using crime as a flimsy excuse just to intimidate Democrats. Yeah, just to intimidate them, not to save lives. No. According to Pritzker, this is not about fighting crime. This is about Donald Trump searching for any justification to deploy the military in a blue state, in a blue state to try to intimidate his political rivals. The narrative just blew up in their faces. And here's how, okay? Watch this tape from Trump. I'm sorry, here we go.
Washington, D.C. is a totally safe city. You're not reporting any crime because there is none. They said crime is down 87%, and I said, no, it's not. It's down 100%. We have a great thing going. I could do that with Chicago. We could do that with New York. We could do it with Los Angeles. So we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago, or do we go to a place like New Orleans, where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of this country that's become quite tough, quite bad. So we're going to be going to maybe Louisiana, and you have New Orleans, which has a crime problem. We'll straighten that out in about 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks, easier than D.C. But we could straighten out Chicago. All they have to do is ask us to go into Chicago if we don't have the support of some of these politicians. But I'll tell you who is supporting us, the people of Chicago. And I sort of want them to let it be known they have incompetent people.
Now, that last part was important. The Dems are just so lost. Their messaging is so skewed by their Trump derangement syndrome and this strategy of if Trump's for it, we're against it. It's killing them because they're losing every issue 80-20. But I want to make clear to you, I had a conversation with a friend about 2026, and they're worried about that in midterm elections. There are things happening now that are beyond politics. This crime issue is one of them. When I start seeing videos and hearing people, black people saying, this is unbelievable. I can walk down the street. I can go to the restaurant. Washington, D.C. hasn't been like this in years. People saying, it's now clear we don't have to live like this. Folks, that's not a political message. That's in your heart. That's in your soul. Once you realize that you've been forced to live like a dog with filthy streets, people preying on you, crime in your city, fear for your children, for your life. And now Trump suddenly goes, poof, look, you don't have to live like this anymore. Holy cow. Why didn't the Dems fix it? Why didn't anybody but Trump fix it? That's, folks, they're going to spread, message going to spread. And now Pritzker and these guys, they're such elitist assholes that they think everyone is stupid and they're brilliant, but they're stupid. The king has no clothes. They're stupid. Because Pritzker goes out and says, the biggest crime areas, the 16 red states are the biggest crime areas. You think anybody doesn't figure out that, in those red states, the crime areas are like St. Louis, Okay? The city is Dem. The state may be red. The city is Dem. You're insulting their intelligence, and you're not going to get away with it. You want to be president, and you intentionally look in the camera and lie? You want to be president? You may not like Trump, and he's got some wild things like this, going to deny Rosie O'Donnell her American citizenship for criticizing stuff. That's, he's does some wacky stuff. But I'll tell you what, he speaks truth. He said immigration is wrong. He said the Fed has not lowered rates, and it's hurting us, and he's right about that. RFK Jr. said the truth to them. You've been here for 20 years. You sat in that chair, and you let the people you approved, each administration put up these people to be in the FDA and the CDC and HHS and all that. You let them hurt Americans and did nothing. That's the truth. Pritzker, Newsom, OAC, Sanders, they fail the test miserably. And it's going to be a big change coming. Okay, some other stories that are important, okay? Because there's so much going on, and we try to keep tracking things that are important. This was a new memo came out. Biden aides believed he should have signed pardons by hand, and he outsourced approval to the vice president, which she doesn't have the right to sign pardons. She doesn't have the right to approve them, okay? Internal memo obtained by Just Said News show President Joe Biden's aides believed at the beginning of his administration that he had an obligation to personally sign official presidential actions, including pardons, and chronicle how the former president later outsourced clemency decisions to then Vice President Kamala Harris. The memos were gathered as part of a sweeping review by the Trump White House into Biden's use of auto pen signatures for official business, an inquiry that now raises new questions about whether the former president actually attended 4 meetings late in his term dedicated to making clemency decisions. Those clemency decisions included preemptive pardons for Biden family members, as well as commutations for federal death row sentences. There are no records of a Biden attending the meetings where the clemency was decided. The National Archives and Record Administration told the Trump White House counsel's office that we did not find specific meeting notes that clearly mentioned or note that the president was present for any of the 4 meetings, according to the documents reviewed by Just the News. President Biden's decision memo on commuting federal death row sentences is unmarked, and the NARA cannot find a version indicating President Biden's approval. Okay? So then this more came out. Watch this video.
As the New York Post reports, White House lawyers and the Justice Department were unsure about how to enact the president's clemency grants in his final days in office. On January 17th, Biden commuted the sentences of nearly 2,500 people convicted on nonviolent drug charges. The Post reports the debate over who to include in the pardons and how to modify their sentences came to a head on the evening of January 16th. Internal emails obtained by the New York Post show White House Staff Secretary Steph Feldman sent an email to West Wing lawyers saying she needs evidence Biden consented before authorizing a mechanical signature. One of the people who received the email, Deputy White House Counsel Taisha Dixon, reportedly sent the message to the Chief of Staff to the White House Counsel's office, Michael Posada, saying, Michael, thoughts on how to handle this? He does not review the warrants. Biden told the New York Times earlier this year that he verbally approved every clemency decision, even if he did not personally sign the warrants, because he says there were a lot of...
Yeah, but that's not true. The evidence is showing he wasn't even aware of it. And guess what? These memos show intent, right? Not like, oh, we don't know what's going on. We thought he approved them. No. They used the auto pen to sign these, clemency documents without his approval. They're not going to stand up in court, folks. We're going to get these out. And hopefully the January 6th ones, the ones for Schiff and all those guys are going to be part of this. We'll see, okay? Keep following, because this is a big story. And again, it just shows how much we have to do to keep fighting the corruption that was that deep within our government, okay? So then I mentioned, deportations, and again, this is a constant fight. Trump clears way to deport more than 250,000 Venezuelans given protection by Biden. This is just maddening. Former President Joe Biden issued two TPS orders for Venezuelans, the first in 2021, the second in 2023, providing eligible migrants with work authorization and temporary protection from deportation. And it is generally available to people whose home country has experienced a natural disaster, armed conflict, or other extraordinary events. But Trump has ruled Venezuela no longer meets those requirements, weighing public safety, national security, migration factors, immigration policy, economic considerations, and foreign policy. It is clear that allowing Venezuelan nationals to remain temporarily in the United States is not in America's best interest. Their designation will expire on September 10th, giving more than 256,000 Venezuelans living in the United States under this TPS status just 7 days to begin arrangements to leave the country. That's how you do it, kids. That's how you do it. And then we mentioned this story last week, but then it came out that HUD is basically saying if you're illegal and you're in government housing, you're going to be thrown out of that housing. The Trump administration has ordered a nationwide review of public housing in an effort to root out residents who are in the country illegally, according to Housing and Urban Development Secretary Scott Turner. Turner wrote that each public housing authority has 30 days to conduct an audit to ensure that the existing orders are enforced. The department is asking for information about the public housing units and verifiable citizenships or eligible immigration status. No longer will illegal aliens be able to leave citizenship boxes blank on their forms to take advantage of HUD funding housing. Okay? And so he's doing this not just in D.C., but all around the country. Once you take away the freebies, why would they stay? Right? That was the whole Dem plan. That was the commie Dem plan. Bring in 15 to 20 million illegals so that they will vote for you illegally in elections, so your mail-in ballot illegal plans, okay? But bribe them. Say, hey, you got to vote for us because we're giving you all the bennies. But when they didn't win, and now these people aren't getting the benefits, guess what, kids? They're not going to vote for the Dems. They're not going to vote for the Dems. And the whole, this whole thing about, illegal immigration and how it hurt us. One of the biggest ways was in housing. We have a housing crisis. We don't have enough houses. So what does that mean? Supply and demand. You have less houses and more people want to buy them. The prices go up. So young Americans can't buy a freaking house for two reasons. One, the prices have been, illegally raised by the illegal immigrants that were brought in, and the interest rates. And so Charlie Kirk, go to our video section at wethepeopleconvention.org, click on the video section, and watch the video with Charlie Kirk in it, explaining to Tucker Carlson, I think it is, that if we don't fix the housing problem for our young people, we're going to have riots in the street. And so that's why this is important, to deport these illegals and to kick them out of government housing, all right? And work on this housing issue. And there's some good things happening. Pending home sales rise as affordable listings climb to highest level since 2022. This is important. The average rate on the 30-year fixed rate mortgage dropped 16 basis points on Friday to 6.29%, according to Mortgage News Daily, following the release of a weaker than expected August employment report. It marks the lowest rate since October 3rd of last year and the biggest one-day drop price since August of 2024. Rates are finally breaking out of the high 6% range where they've been stuck for months. Graham said in a post at X that many lenders are priced better than October 3rd and would be quoting at a high 5% range. The drop is a major change from May, when the rate on the 30-year fixed mortgage peaked at 7.08%. The bid for buyers out shopping for a home today, that's big for buyers out shopping for a home today, especially given higher home prices. So bottom line is, it looks like the housing market is going to start to turn. Why? Because Trump is throwing out, by best estimates, it's like 2.5 million illegals have left already. How many houses is that? A lot, okay? Pending home sales rose by 1.6% year over year during the 4 weeks that ended on August 27th, marking 2 straight months of increases in pending sales. Let's see, according to online platform Zillow, reported about 439,000 homes for sale in July were affordable to a household earning a medium income, or a 20% jump from 2024. Both metrics point to a robust buyer's market. Redfin reported that the number of home tours is rising much faster this year than at the same time last year. Buyers are circling, a Redfin agent in San Francisco said. House hunters are feeling more confident about buying a home now that mortgage rates have started to decline. Some are making offers now, although others are sitting tight, betting that rates will fall further. I'm telling buyers to act now because it's still a buyer's market, and most sellers are willing to negotiate. Now, what is this all about? Well, it has to do with the Fed, and we said the interest rates are too high. They should have dropped them last year, or at least this year. Well, it's going to happen now. Why? Because they mentioned that article, the jobs report. U.S. job growth collapses to just 22,000 for the month. Unemployment raises to 4.3%, putting 50 basis point rate cut in play. Okay? So what's going on? Ahead of today's job report, that was Friday, the day before this is being recorded on September 6th, consensus was that a point between 40 and 100,000 in new jobs, largely priced into the into a 0.25% rate Fed rate cut. However, it would take some real outlying number for the Fed either cut by 50%, a 0.5%, or whatever. Well, they got that number. With only 22,000 jobs created, it looks pretty clear the Fed is going to have to cut interest rates by at least 0.5%, and some people are calling for 0.75% or 1%. Either way, it helps you and I. It helps the housing market. It helps our country. It helps young people, but it's going to help you on your credit card bills, on whatever loans you have that have variable rate interest and things that are pegged to the Fed rate. They're going to drop, and we're going to welcome that. This is the start. We've got big economic headwinds ahead of us, particularly in the area of electricity pricing. And I know many of you are seeing that and facing that. I just renegotiated in Ohio. We can go and shop for our electric and gas. And the best I could get was a 30% increase over the next 9 months. We're hurting on the electricity side. And I know the Trump administration is attuned to that. I saw an article about that because it will affect the 2026 election if they don't do something about it. So we'll see what happens. They got the pedal to the metal on energy, but electric prices are a big problem. Okay, so I got a couple more stories, and then we'll break for the half of the show. This was I don't know. I don't know if I should have been surprised, but I was. Senator Tim Kaine tells Americans their rights come from government, not God. Seriously. Democrat Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, in a hearing on Wednesday, told the room the notion that rights don't come from laws and don't come from government, but come from the Creator, that's what the Iranian government believes. So the statement that our rights do not come from our laws or our government is extremely troubling. You know what's extremely troubling? You, as a senator, swore an oath, right? You swore oath to what? To protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. How can you then be a senator and make that statement? The fact of the matter is, he just showed he doesn't believe in America. He sure doesn't believe in God. And Ted Cruz just took him to school. Here we go.
The notion that rights don't come from laws and don't come from the government, but come from the Creator, that's what the Iranian government believes. So the statement that our rights do not come from our laws or our governments is extremely troubling.
So Senator Kaine said in this hearing that he found it a radical and dangerous notion that you would say our rights came from God and not from government. I just walked into the hearing as he was saying that, and I almost fell out of my chair. Because that radical and dangerous notion, in his words, is literally the founding principle upon which the United States of America was created. And if you do not believe me, and you made reference to this, Mr. Barnes, then you can believe perhaps the most prominent Virginian to ever serve, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator, not by government, not by the Democratic National Committee, but by God."
Can't be much clearer than that, can it? Why would anyone ever vote for any commie Democrat in any election? Show that clip. It'll be on our podcast page, right? On our at wethepeopleconvention.org, on our podcast page, we will list every story in this podcast with a link to the actual article or the video, okay? And you can click on it and share the video with everyone so they understand. Do you believe in America? Do you believe in our founding documents? Do you believe in government of the people, by the people, for the people? Do you believe in individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, not government control? Not like the Dems want for the CDC to tell you you must take the COVID shot. We believe, like the Florida Surgeon General, who am I to tell you what you can do to your body? That's between you and your God, Senator Kaine. You people in Virginia should be embarrassed that someone like that represents you, and you should let him know. And so I'm going to just wrap up the show by saying, despite all the attacks, I'll tell you about more attacks on Trump in the second half of the podcast, Trump is winning because he's picking the issues that matter to Americans: immigration, crime, the economy. And he's winning. And he's acting. He's not just talking. And so Trump's approval rating hits a new high amid aggressive crime crackdown. President Trump has reached a peak approval rating of 55%, as reported by a new Daily Mail JL Partners poll conducted from August 21st to September 1st with 867 registered voters. The survey reflects a 6-point jump from July results, with a margin of error of 3.3%. James Johnson, co-founder of JL Partners, who did the poll, stated, "This is the highest approval figure we have ever shown for Donald Trump. The surge follows Trump's August 11th executive order federalizing the police force in Washington, D.C. and deploying federal law enforcement and National Guard troops, which has achieved significant reductions in violent crime." And basically, that's what made people approval of Trump go up, by telling the truth and by acting. The Democrats can't do that. All they got is lies, and they can't act because anything they want to do fails. People don't like it. So keep up the fight. Share the stories in the beginning of this podcast, with others. And we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back for the second half of our podcast. You've been listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. What, something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. If you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And it's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like, and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People Convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday, so if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday, and in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot. All right, and we're glad you're back for the second half of our podcast. We hope you enjoyed the first half of the podcast. I hope you're seeing how things are shaping up, how the effort Trump is making to fight the counter-revolution and to dismantle, the left, whether it be, RFK Jr., cleaning out the cesspool that is our supposed healthcare system. It's a sick care system, all right? Or it's, getting rid of the illegal immigrants. It's working, but it's a work in progress. And you and I have a responsibility to support that, okay? So, thank you for watching the first half of the show. I'm glad you're with us for the second half. We've got some good things here. I usually, for those of you who are new to the podcast, and welcome to all you guys who are, coming to us, I'm going to have some statistics for you. They're not complete, but it'll give you some idea of how we're expanding our reach through TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and things that we hadn't been doing for years. And many of you are coming now to see the podcast, and I want you to feel welcome. I want you to understand that you can write to us at info@wethepeopleconvention.org if you have any questions, suggestions, if you disagree with something we're saying. We're about truth. We're not here to lie to you. We're here to help you understand what's really going on in our world so that you can protect your own individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, and also help our country have greatness. Help everyone. We're in this for everyone. We're not just in it for ourselves. We the people means all of us. We don't care about your race, creed, religion, anything. Okay? So Well, we really appreciate you joining us if you're doing it for the first time. And boy, those of you who've been with us a long time, I appreciate you guys so much. You know that. I try to say that. I try to be honest about that. But we wouldn't be here without you. And we have accomplished some pretty amazing things. If you ever want to see a little bit of a list of that, just go to the WeThePeopleConvention.org, click on the donate link, and it takes you to a page that says, why should I donate? And it talks about what we've done. We've punched above our weight for 16 years, folks, and we've made a real difference. And quite frankly, we're still here as a nation because of the things that this organization has done to protect our nation and to defend it. So, all right, now we talk about domestic issues, and we'll talk about some more domestic issues in this second half. But you have to realize we are in a real difficult situation globally. The world is split, and this week, China and Russia and unfortunately India came together to show that split. And unfortunately for us, commies in the U.S. media celebrated China's massive military parade after trashing the parade we had for our Army's 250th anniversary in Washington, D.C. But what would you expect, right? You knew that's what they were going to do. So I put that article at WeThePeopleConvention.org so you can share it. The liberal media today was still that same media that bashed American troops and supported our enemies during Vietnam. There was an updated version of that mentality visible during the Tuesday morning newscast on ABC, CBS, and NBC, when all three of them hyped China's military parade marking the end of World War II, when just a few months ago, they all condemned the U.S. military parade celebrating the Army's 250th birthday. They also hyped how this was a powerful flex against the United States on many levels. Quote, Chinese president hosting Russian Vladimir Putin and India's prime minister. It could have major ramifications for the U.S., especially with India frustrated over Trump's new tariffs, announced ABC co-host Robin Roberts on Good Morning America. It just went on and on and on. Look at this parade. Oh, it's spectacular. But yeah, 3 months ago, all three of the broadcast senators denounced and smeared the military parade that marked the U.S. 250th anniversary. The ABC News program The View co-host Sarah Haynes clutched her pearls and condemned seeing our soldiers. I can't be the only one when I think of military parades. I think of Russia. I think of North Korea. I have these visuals of people saluting and doing things, and that's just not what I think of when I think of the U.S. A parade that harkens World War II propaganda and just throws away money that way. I can't keep up with all of that. Yeah. They're just commies. They're commie lovers. And they love the fact that communist China is threatening the United States. If you go to our website, WeThePeopleConvention.org, click on China Owns the Dems, you will see links to stories for the last 15 years of the Communist Party buying our politicians and our news media. To do what? To help destroy American society, to bring the trans movement here, to bring the whole thing about accusing men of rape, okay, the Me Too movement and all that stuff. It's all a psyop by the communist Chinese to destroy the United States, and the media, quote unquote, is an accomplice. They're an accomplice to this, and so you got to call them out. And you gotta embarrass them. But this parade was a big deal. I'm not saying it wasn't a big deal, okay? There's another picture of it. Chinese military parade reveals hypersonic missiles, drones, submarines, and ICBMs. Soldiers in pristine and pressed uniforms marched in their lockstep, their boots clacking a steady cadence on the pavement, and their eyes following their leader Xi Jinping as he drove by in review. Helicopters flew overhead, forming the numbers 8 and 0 in honor of the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. There is no shortage of pageantry on Wednesday's military parade in Beijing. Beyond the spectacle, it also provided the first good look at China's latest military hardware. New missiles, drones, and other high-tech equipment have been added to its arsenal as part of a massive modernization program with the goal, according to the official parade announcers, of producing a force with both nuclear and conventional capabilities able to deter wars in all battle spaces. Okay? So, yeah, they're saying we're here. We're building our military to do what? To offset the United States. And as I've said to you guys, the evidence is everywhere. Just this week, what happens? State Department officer gets 4 years in prison for selling defense secrets to China. A State Department staffer was sentenced on September 4th to 4 years in prison for selling defense intelligence to individuals believed to be working for the Chinese communist regime. They're spies. That's why we don't want 600,000 Chinese students here. We don't want the 300,000 to war here. We want to catch the 60,000 who came across open borders that Biden conveniently provided for them, where they weren't even stopped or asked questions. Oh, they just let them in. We covered that story so they can be what? Saboteurs in our country if we end up going to war. So, what did Trump do? Trump signed order renaming the Department of Defense as the Department of War. President Donald Trump on September 5th signed an executive order renaming the Department of Defense as the Department of War. I think it's a much more appropriate name. Okay? And here's what he said. This is a real short clip.
We've been talking about this Department of War. So we won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything before that and in between. And then we decided to go woke and we changed the name to Department of Defense. So we're going Department of War.
Yeah, Department of War. Well, what words matter, okay? And I understand what he's saying. We're not just going to defend ourselves. We're going to fight and win. Looks to me like we're prepared for war, doesn't it? Doesn't it look like that to you? Isn't that why we've got to, you and I, have an obligation to get people to join the skilled trades so we can build the AI centers and the energy plants to fuel those centers, and then rebuild the middle class by finding people that can work the jobs that are coming in the pharmaceutical industry, in the chip industry, in the automobile industry that are moving to our country from all over the world because of the tariffs. He didn't name it the Department of War because we're not going to fight, did he? I don't think he did. France's government, they talk a big game. Macron comes across here and says, 26 countries, including Canada, have agreed to put troops on the ground in Ukraine if we can get a peace deal. Yeah, in the meantime, the French government is on the brink of collapse again. Emmanuel Macron looks likely to lose another prime minister over an attempt to curb public debt. And again, it's the woke policies that the Chinese communists paid politicians to implement that destroyed Western economies. The solar, the Green New Scam, all of that in the Netherlands, crushing their farm industry because the cows' farts pollute the air. That insanity is what has destroyed the West. And now France's government is about to fall again. France is on the brink of another political crisis after Prime Minister François Bayrou's shocking decision to submit his government to a vote of confidence in the parliament. The chances of his winning the vote in a special session on September 8th are extremely slim. The Prime Minister's days in office look numbered. If the vote is lost, which is expected to happen, he will resign, leaving France once again rudderless at a time of immense economic and societal and geopolitical uncertainty. They have Le Pen. They have a Trump-like party who wants to get the illegal immigrants out of France, reverse course, okay? And they don't do it. They won't do it. And it's all about debt. And we talked about that. I put the video up for you last week in our video section where Tucker Carlson's talking to the guy about what is our future. And the problem is the public debt. Well, France has 116%. Their gross government debt is 116% of the gross domestic product. They're in a crisis. They think their country's going to collapse financially. You know what our gross domestic debt is? 122%. 122%. We cannot survive. We must cut damn government spending. And yet, nobody in government wants to do that. No one that you elect has the guts to do what they all must know we have to do. But they won't do it. You know why? Because they only care about themselves. They only care about themselves. And so this is not just a fight here. This is a global fight. The fight for conservatives, the anti-debt, the reduction in size and power of government, the rejection of the communist model that you are here to serve the state and your rulers, and you're lucky if we give you some place to live and some food to eat. That's what we're rejecting. That's what Tim Kaine doesn't get, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that our rights come from God, not from you. And we formed our government to protect our rights, not to destroy them. So the fight is going on in Germany, and this is a curious little story. 6 candidates from Germany's right-wing AfD party die 13 days apart in lead up to local elections. What the heck? Okay? 4 candidates and 2 reserves from the right-wing AfD political party in Germany have dropped dead within 13 days of each other just before elections. The Alternative for Deutschland candidates were set to appear on ballots beginning on September 14th. Officials said no foul play is currently suspected in any of their deaths. Really? Well, it turns out now that isn't 6. It's up to 10. It's up to 10. And, nothing to see here. Well, here's what you need to see here. This is just tweeted by Elon Musk this morning on X. If AfD doesn't win, Germany is kaput. Germany is ready for massive change. The AfD party is the only party that supports mass deportations. They now have a huge lead in the polls. And for those of you watching, you can see that. For those listening on audio only, the AfD has 39% approval, more than the next group that has 27%. It's a fight for freedom globally. And we've got to support every effort, every way we can. So then, we talk about the Department of War, and we talk about what we're going to do. I've said that China has been at war with us for 30 years. All the fentanyl in this country that is killing 100,000 military age, mostly men in our country for the last, 10 years was from China. Well, here's the proof. Feds intercept 1,300 barrels. These are 55,000 gallon drums of meth precursor chemicals shipped from China to Mexico. What? I have told you that in Mexico, there is a port that has factories that are literally staffed by Chinese workers to create the fentanyl that the Mexican drug cartels then smuggle across our border to kill us. Okay? And I've said Trump should drop a cruise missile on those places. Well, this is pretty close to it. Listen to what Judge Janine has to say.
Hi, everyone. I'm Judge Janine, and I am in Houston, Texas. And I am surrounded by 1,300 barrels of precursors that are being used to make methamphetamines. These precursors were seized as a result of work by my office in Washington, D.C., along with Homeland Security and Customs and Border Patrol. These 1,300 barrels were shipped from Shanghai, China to Mexico. We intercepted these precursors on the high seas, and now the Sinaloa cartel will not be able to use them to make methamphetamines. And the bottom line is this. Whenever there is an effort on the part of foreign terrorist organizations to create drugs that are killing Americans, we will seize them, whether it's on the high seas or whether it's in the country or a foreign country. And by the way, is going to take 24 18-wheelers, 24 18-wheelers to take all of these containers and put them in a secure storage facility. And that's what we're doing in D.C., but we're doing it in Houston today. And you never know where we're going to be tomorrow.
So why wasn't this done last year, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago? This is an attack on our nation. That's what this is. They might as well be shipping bombs. These drugs, if they get to Mexico, what do they become? Fentanyl that kill us, right? Why wasn't our military, why wasn't our government defending us? You know why? Because they were all bought off by the Chinese, and they hate you. They despise you. The elites, like Tim Kaine, want to rule over you and me. That's why they hate us. That's why they don't want a middle class that can fight back. That's why they tried to jail the patriots who supported Donald Trump with the bullcrap domestic violence charges and insurrection lies. Okay? But now that's changing, and it's way past time. And so when this happened this week, everything we know about the U.S. strike on the alleged Venezuelan drug boat, when Trump showed video of a Venezuelan boat, supposedly, with drugs on it, being blown up by the U.S. military, he was sending a message. Now, of course, we had the people in the United States saying, the U.S. military has carried out a lethal strike against a suspected Venezuelan drug vessel in the southern Caribbean, killing 11 people. The incident, announced by President Trump on September 2nd, represents the first known use of direct military force against a drug cartel's maritime operations since the deployment of additional U.S. warships to the region. The strike was its first of its kind in the Caribbean, destroying a suspected drug vessel. The attack comes amid a significant buildup of American naval and aerial assets in the region, while celebrated by some officials as a decisive step against narco-terrorism. It's also drew scrutiny over its illegality and proportionality and broader implications. See, because right away the Dems, who are Trump derangement syndrome, who are on the wrong side of the 80-20 issue, are saying, well, drugs, putting drugs in the United States isn't an act of war. It's just illegal. You should have stopped the boat and arrested them. Yeah, that's what they said. That doesn't work. They don't understand anything but force. The Biden administration, by allowing the cartels to traffic 15 million illegals into our country. Do you understand? They got paid thousands of dollars for every one of them. These drug cartels are worth billions of dollars. They have their own freaking submarines. They have military weapons. They literally control the government of Mexico. And you don't want to use military force against them? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, we do. And so these people were off our ships that are off of Venezuela, and Maduro, the narco dictator of Venezuela. Yeah, you can call up all the reserves you want, because the 6 destroyers, and now I guess we've shipped like 10 aircraft to Puerto Rico. We can take you out like that, pal. You keep killing our kids and you're going to die. And everybody around you is going to die. And everybody in the United States who works with you should die. And everybody in Congress and every other government agency who were part of letting them in, they need to be prosecuted for treason. Because that's what they committed. We welcome President Trump's action, and we're glad to see it. We're glad to see this as well. Oh, they're going to shut down Alligator Alcatraz. Oh, the media just try. Look at this judge said that the Everglades, this jail violates our environmental laws. You need to close that. And they were all giddy. Oh, they're shutting it down. Yeah, not so much. Trump's Alligator Alcatraz will not have to shut down after a circuit court overturned a woke judge's order. In August, Obama-appointed U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams ruled that the alleged environmental harms of the famous Florida illegal alien detention facility outweighed the facility's necessity. So get this, the fact that some alligator can't walk through this way and has to go around is more important. That alligator's rights are more important than protecting our children, our families from rape, from murder, from carjackings, which is what these illegals have been doing. Get that? Get that? Yeah, you see how woke that is? How stupid that is? How illogical that is? But that decision was overturned on Thursday as the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals blocked her order to close the illegal alien detention facility in Florida and halt all construction there. The federal appeals court also blocked Williams from proceeding with the case until Florida's appeal is complete. This is a big win not only for the Trump administration and the state government of Florida, but for all Americans, since Alligator Alcatrazto is a particularly secure location for holding dangerous illegal alien criminals prior to deportation. As Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said in response to the ruling, the mission continues on immigration enforcement. Hear, hear, America first. That's awesome. This, I don't think, is going to work, but I understand the thought. Trump DOJ considering gun restrictions for transgender after the Minnesota shooting of the kids in the church. Okay? And the RFK say we're going to investigate, that transgenders, that the drugs they are given actually create more mental illness and a desire to act out, to kill themselves and others. Okay? That's legit, but I don't know if you can just say you can't have guns, right? This gets into the red flag law thing. The Department of Justice is considering imposing restrictions that would prevent those undergoing gender transition or diagnosed with gender dysphoria from purchasing firearms. Notably, the potential legal restrictions come in the wake of anti-Trump transgender Robin Westman's deadly attack on, his name was Robert, not Robin, he was a man, on a back-to-school mass at an Annunciation Church in Minneapolis last week. Reportedly, the DOJ is discussing internally whether to extend restrictions that bar certain mentally ill people from owning firearms to those with gender dysphoria, which is itself classified as a mental disorder. Don't know if that's going to pass, because you start doing that. Remember, they said, we were insurrectionists and we shouldn't be allowed to have guns. It's a slippery slope. We get why they're looking at it, but it is an interesting thing will the Dems support it? You want to take away guns. Why not take them away from the transgender? Hey, Cory Booker, what do you have to say about that? Let's put a microphone in front of him and get his answer, right? Kind of an interesting tactic. This is something that you just need to know as a fact, okay? We've talked about it. The fact of the matter is, Barack Obama had 300 of his appointees confirmed by the Senate at this time in his term, and Donald Trump has 173. Why? The biggest hindrance to confirming Trump's nominee is John Thune. It's just a fact. He can lie to you all he wants. It's just not true. Thune and the Senate have shown little to no appetite for doing what's necessary to get the president's nominees across the finish line. Senate Majority Leader John Thune wants GOP voters to believe that the Senate Republicans have no ability to speed up the confirmation of the more than 140 Trump nominees languishing in the upper chamber. But that isn't entirely true. After returning from Congress's month-long August vacation, which we said they shouldn't take, they should have been there every day confirming the appointees, or if they were going to go away, allowed recess appointments, but they did neither. Thune took to the Senate floor on Tuesday to pin the blame for the continued confirmation delay on the president's appointees squarely on the shoulders of Senate Democrats. Verbally wagging his finger at his leftist colleagues, the majority leader said their historic obstruction cannot continue. Okay? He said, I would say, Mr. President, this is in the Democrats' court. Except the ball is not in the Democrats' court. It's in Thune's. Contrary to his persistent narrative that Democratic obstruction, the Senate Majority Leader has always possessed the power to hold the upper chamber in session until confirmation of Trump's nominees are completed. So again, Thune is right that traditionally, most of these appointees are just confirmed by a voice vote because it's no big deal. The Democrats, with Trump derangement syndrome hate Trump and don't want to appoint any one of them. So they're forcing the Senate to go through all this stuff. But Thune is in charge. And here's the answer. All he has to do. During a recent interview on the American Moment of Truth podcast, the Federalist Richard Brevard explained the Senate confirmation process for executive nominees and how Thune and Senate Republicans have stepped off the gas on nominations in particular. Most of the nominees confirmed in the Senate are now what we call 2-hour nominees. So you invoke cloture on 51 votes. You have only to run 2 hours of debate, and then you can confirm all 51 of them 2 hours later. Brevard said Senator Republicans have left approximately 140 civilian nominations lingering on the Senate executive calendar, a lot of whom are tasked with actually getting the president's agenda done. They simply won't do it. If they work, they're only working 3 days a week. If they work 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and you brought up 50 appointees, and there was 2 hours of debate, you could confirm all 140 of them in 1 day. Thune won't do it. First ask of the show, call your senators and say, bullshit, we're done. Get this done. Tell Thune you're done. You want us to work for you? You want us to donate to you? You want us to re-elect you in 2026 when you're doing stuff like this? No, we'll find someone to run against you. We'll try to get Elon Musk to help. We'll try to get Trump to not endorse you. Stop it. You're hurting us. You're hurting our nation. You're hurting the president. We voted you in to do what the president needs done. Not confirming 140 people is not what the president needs done. Okay? It's disgusting. It's disgraceful. And they're liars. He's a damnable liar, Thune is. Okay. Sorry, I got a little worked up there, but make the calls. It matters. Make the calls. This is important to many of you, to some of you, let's say, not many of you, some of you. IRS and Social Security Administration and more to stop issuing paper checks as part of Trump executive order. This, could affect you, so I want to put it in the podcast. The federal government is making a major change to its business operations that could impact benefit checks for hundreds of thousands of Americans starting on September 30th. The federal government will no longer issue paper checks for most payments and will not accept paper checks as payments. So when you do your payment for your income tax, you're going to have to do it electronically. The change is thanks to executive order signed by President Donald Trump in March. The order directs the Secretary of Treasury to cease issuing paper checks for all federal disbursements. That includes Social Security benefit checks, veterans benefit checks, and IRS refund checks. Reducing paper checks has been a long-standing bipartisan goal that our administration is finally putting into action. Thanks to President Trump, this will help reduce fraud and theft. It will also remove delays that prevent hardworking Americans from receiving their virtual payments in a timely manner. So if you don't have a checking account, or if this is a problem, I'll put the link to this article in our podcast page, but you can call the federal agency that pays your benefits and follow their instructions for enrolling in direct deposits. You can even get this thing that's called the Direct Express Debit MasterCard from the Treasury, where the money will be put on that card and then you can use it. Okay? Just know this change is coming and it may affect you. Let's see here. What else? FTC, this I thought was really long overdue, and I was glad to see this. Trump FTC takes action against Pornhub and other child sexual abuse material providers. Basically, the President Federal Election Trade Commission announced on Wednesday that it will join Utah in a settlement action and consent order against a number of adult content websites, including Pornhub and RedTube. The Utah Attorney General's office and the Federal Trade Commission contend that websites deceive users by doing little to block tens of thousands of videos and photos featuring child sexual abuse material and non-consensual material, despite claiming that this content was strictly prohibited. It wasn't. They were allowing it. Pornhub operators turned a blind eye to the proliferation of videos depicting the sexual abuse of children on its site so it could profit off this exploitation, the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection said. He continued, under the order we're announcing today, Pornhub's operators will be required to take concrete steps to block this harmful content and ensure that those who appear in the videos on their sites are consenting adults. So this is a good thing. There's a $15 million fine. And it's exploitation of children and minors. Are we a moral society or not? Why wasn't this done before? Because we're not a moral society. Tim Kaine doesn't believe in God. They think they are God. And they're like the guy that got fired from the CDC was literally a Satan worshiper. Satan worshipers don't want to stop this. They want to do this. That's why we voted for Trump. That's what this is all about. This was, I think, funny. Schwarzenegger steps back into political arena in redistricting crusade. As you guys know, California is now, to counter Texas, redistricting 5 more seats. They're going to try to do a referendum in November to redistrict California to add 9 more Democratic seats, which is insane, okay? Because, it doesn't represent the people in California who vote Republican. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was on the committee that helped pass their original thing that said, we're taking redistricting out of the hands of the corrupt politicians, and we're going to have a citizens committee do that. What the referendum that Newsom is pushing does is it changes that and says, that citizens commission, just give us the power back to the politicians to rig the elections for 26, 28, and 30, and then we'll give it back to you. Well, Schwarzenegger is selling shirts that say, terminate gerrymandering, and he's coming out against this. And this is going to be a big fight. I think we can win this fight in California. I think we can do it. We're going to see. There's going to be lots of money spent, and Schwarzenegger is a great voice for this, and we're going to see. But it is basically a referendum on Newsom. If Newsom loses that fight, he's done. He will not be their nominee for president. He's done. He'll be a loser. That's why it's worth fighting that fight. Now, again, it's California. They're going to rig the damn vote, okay? Unless we can fix that. I don't know. I know Trump's going to try. We'll see. But it's worth fighting. It's worth the effort, okay? This is very disappointing to me. Judge imposes curbs on Google search deals, rejects DOJ push to break up in landmark antitrust ruling. This wasn't a landmark antitrust ruling. This was just more of the same. The reason we are in the position we're in, where we have people that are not just billionaires, but verging on trillionaires, and we have this huge gap, we have this oligarchy, is because the federal government has not enforced antitrust. This ruling is a sham. It's absolute garbage, and I'll prove it here. Google will have to share data with competitors in the online search industry, a federal district judge ruled September 2nd. At the same time, Washington-based U.S. District Judge Amit Mehta rejected federal and state prosecutors' request that Google be compelled to sell off its Chrome browser and other things. In March, the U.S. Justice Department, a coalition of 38 state attorney generals, 38, so that's not just all Republicans, asked the court to force Google to sell Chrome and implement measures to dismantle the company's internet search monopoly. They have a search monopoly. The Department of Justice initially filed the suit against Google in 2020, marking the largest U.S. tech antitrust case since its battle against Microsoft in the 1990s. The lawsuit alleged that Google used anti-competitive tactics to maintain its dominance, securing contracts that made it the default search engine on web browsers and smartphones. Google has long held nearly 90% of the U.S. search market. The company attributes its dominance to superior service. It argues that users can easily switch search engines and it still faces competition from Microsoft, Bing, and others. Bull! They pay Apple like $20 billion a year to make their search the default on your iPhone. Okay? They do it through anti-competitive practices. And the judges, the courts, just ruled they're not a monopoly. And they have to share some of their search data results, but they don't have to sell out Chrome. They don't have to stop paying people to not use your search, but use theirs. And you know what was really disturbing? there was a meeting at the White House with all these big tech executives, and Google's CEO thanked Trump for bringing this to a settlement. But they also mentioned about, oh yeah, that Trump has a suit against Google that they're hoping to settle soon. This stinks. This stinks. This is corruption. This is big tech buying influence. And I've told you, I've warned you, write down the name Peter Thiel. Write down the name Peter Thiel. Every time you see anything about him, read it, watch it, listen to it. Because he's the man that's controlling the whole thing, including J.D. Vance being vice president, including Elon Musk and all the tech guys coming on behind Trump. This is all about AI and the tech bros, as Steve Bannon likes to call them, getting their way with our government. And we better be on guard. And President Trump is not immune to being swayed, okay? We got to call it out. That decision stinks. Doesn't help us. Doesn't make us freer, okay? Doesn't. Okay, so a couple more stories and then we'll wrap it up. But this, I got to address this Epstein thing. What a disaster this has been. A totally unforced error. And now you got to see it for what it is. So I'm going to explain it to you. And I'm asking you guys to get out in front of this, because this is Russia 2.0. This is totally made up. The whole deal is that they're trying to get people thinking, you go on X, there's all kinds of stories about Trump's a pedophile. Trump was in bed with Epstein, blah, blah, blah. You know why? Well, if you don't release the list, then Trump must be on it. Except that doesn't make any sense. Epstein victims hold a strange press conference in Washington, D.C. And man, I watched it, and it was strange, but it was compelling. You see these young women, kind of saying, I was raped over and over by these men and women, and I think they should release the files and stuff. But there was also stuff that didn't make sense. Twice, this is from our friend Sundance, I think it is, as Conservative Trios. Twice, the Trump DOJ has asked the courts to permit the release of names associated with the cases against Jeffrey Epstein and the victims of sex trafficking therein. Twice, the courts have denied the Trump administration the ability to release the sealed grand jury record. So these are the grand jury that convicted Maxwell, Epstein's assistant, and the ones that put Epstein in prison. They're part of the court case and they're sealed. Trump can't release them. Oh, but the left likes that. Most of the various victims of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operations have previously been paid victims' compensation amid various lawsuits, including a substantial $290 million financial settlement from JP Morgan Bank in 2023. That's just 2 years ago. One of the financial institutions used by Epstein. These lawsuits resulted in what has been reported as various non-disclosure agreements which the victims signed, meaning the victims got money and signed an agreement that they wouldn't name names. But after the DOJ and Congress had released all the available files they had, and with various courts refusing to break the seal on names and files with grand jury records, and against a background of multiple victims receiving considerable previous compensation, a group of Epstein victims held a press conference in Washington, D.C. today, demanding the sealed names and non-disclosures, covered names be released. Well, how are you going to release them? You can't. Oh, but they like that. The victims would not, most likely because they legally cannot, discuss the names. But they did say they would compile another private list of names of the people of whom they were trafficked. And they said, we're going to compile a list. They didn't say they would release it. They didn't say they would release it, okay? So some have claimed that the comprehensive list of names in grand jury files or prior lawsuits would include Donald Trump. That's what they want you to believe. Russia, Russia, Russia. Nothing to it, right? But again, when are you going to stop beating your wife? It's a trick. However, it seems ridiculous to make that assertion given the profile of President Trump in 2016 and 2024. If there was any risk to President Trump, the Clinton campaign surely would have exploited the vulnerability during the height of the Me Too movement in 2016, right? They were paying women to accuse Trump of rape, right? They were doing that. And they're trying to do that with these women too. And don't think they won't do it. But it's all a lie. Absurdly, even without Clinton, the Kamala Harris campaign would have used that narrative in 2024. Neither political opposition effort ever engaged in such a claim. The Biden administration did not say, we're going to release the Epstein files because Trump's in it. You think they wouldn't have? They wouldn't have had to make up these bogus trials in New York and Georgia if they had the goods. They don't have the goods. So you and I have to debunk the lie. You're going to do that with this video, which will be on our podcast page. Here you go.
He's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down. The president knows and has great sympathy for the women who have suffered these unspeakable harms. It's detestable to him. He and I have spoken about this as recently as 24 hours ago.
The only thing that I can say about President Trump is that he is the only person who, in 2009, when I served a lot of subpoenas on a lot of people, or at least gave notice to some pretty connected people that I wanted to talk to them, he is the only person who picked up the phone and said, let's just talk. I'll give you as much time as you want. I'll tell you what you need to know, and was very helpful in the information that he gave, and gave no indication whatsoever that he was involved in anything untoward whatsoever, but had good information that checked out and that helped us, and that we didn't have to take a deposition of him.
That was in 2009?
That was in 2009. I can tell you that I talked to President Trump back in 2009, and several times after that. He didn't think that it was a hoax then. In fact, he helped me. He got on the phone. He told me things that were helping our investigation. Now, our investigation wasn't looking into him, but he was helping us then.
Okay. So he mentioned the hoax because Trump said this is a Democrat hoax. And it is. Like Russia, Russia, Russia. He doesn't think what happened to those girls is a hoax. He knows it happened because he told the FBI about it. Johnson just said he was an FBI informant. Okay? But it's a political stunt. We have to end it. Okay? You and I have to share that video. Why? If there's the Occam's razor review of the current state of Epstein victim status is one that points toward extortion. The victims have previously signed agreements would be at legal risk to violate their various NDAs. However, for the purpose of structuring a political narrative, they are likely revenue sources willing to fund an ongoing victim narrative. I suspect the lawyers representing the victims in the video, Gloria frickin' Aldred, the Me Too lawyer, was at the press conference. Okay, who was one of the ones who paid people to accuse people of crimes, of rape. Okay, that's who was on the stage. Are likely compensated by the same entities who fund large domestic political operations. The victims now seem more akin to political operatives looking for some kind of secondary payday by maintaining a story they are not legally permitted to advance in specific ways. The victim group continually says they will not name the people to whom they were trafficked, which is strange considering the high visibility of their performance and their obvious demand to release grand jury names that could be settled by their own statements releasing names. In other words, why do you need a grand jury to release it if you're going to say, Bill Gates raped me? Why don't you just say it? Additionally, their claims of imminent fear do not resonate truthfully against the backdrop of their quite happy presentation. Okay? That's the bottom line. This is a hit job on Donald Trump. You have to expose it as that. That's a direct ask. You got to share that video, which I will post on our podcast page, with everyone and just say, look what they're trying to do with Trump. It's Russia, Russia, Russia again. Okay? All right. Two more things. I said I would tell you about our how we're doing on social media. This is an analytics, and it's not comprehensive. It only includes TikTok and YouTube, and we're on Instagram, and we're on these other things as well. But what you'll see is that we had 11,582 views in the last 7 days just on those two sites. And so we're really expanding our reach on social media. And I welcome those of you who are following us. And it's Tom Z WTPC or We the People Convention. It's mostly Tom Z WTPC. If you're on TikTok, follow us and then share our stuff. A lot of you have been saying to me, you love it. Because what I'm basically doing is I'm taking this podcast and I'm using this AI company that then breaks the whole podcast into like 30 little videos that are between 30 seconds and 2 minutes on a specific topic. And then I'm picking the ones I think are most valuable, and they tell you, kind of which ones are trending on different platforms. And I'm posting like one a day. And apparently it works. And people are telling me they're loving it. Let me know. Write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. Tell me if I'm doing too many, too few. If you don't like it, whatever. Okay? But let's do that. In this podcast, I've asked you to do some things. I've said you got to share that video about Trump having nothing to do with Epstein, that story. And you can use our chapters player in our podcast page, which comes out on Sundays, where you can go to just that story, click the link, and it'll give you a URL to start the video of this podcast at that story that will include my comments and that video. I've asked you to contact your senator and tell them, quit lying to us about Thune, and let's get every one of Trump's people confirmed this month. This month. I've asked you to do those things, and you do those. I mentioned the 600,000 Chinese and how we got Trump to back off. Well, and I also have said to you, I will never ask you to do anything that I don't do. That'd be wrong. That's not leadership. So when I say call someone, I do it. I ask you to do it, I do it. So last week, we covered the story about Cracker Barrel, right? And we showed that Cracker Barrel, responded to our position that we didn't want them to change the logo. But then we talked about the fact that we found that they were woke as heck, that they were spending the money we spent at their restaurant, the profits were going to their corporation to fund drag shows and drag parades and DEI. And we showed that those web pages have been taken down. They've gone back to the old logo. They've apologized, and they're trying to fix it. I said to you last week, go to your Cracker Barrel and talk to the manager and help them understand where we're coming from and what we need to do. So Nan and I went to Cracker Barrel Wednesday night, I think it was, or Thursday, and met with the manager named Nicole. And I will tell you, their business was down. It looked to me like they were down 50%. Well, we like Cracker Barrel. We like the food. Their prices are better than most places. And it's a unique experience with the shop and stuff that's there. And so we met with the manager and we said, listen, here's what you got to understand. We're watching you. And if you don't tell your corporate company, and by the way, I didn't know this. I asked them if they were a franchise, and she said, no, every Cracker Barrel is corporate owned. They're 100% corporate owned. But she said, we have power. We don't have to do things just because, the CEO says so. We, as runner, the people who run the operation, can push back. She said, we're not changing. They are updating. But I think you'll like some of the changes. They're just a little brighter, but we're going to have all the artifacts. We're going to, have the fireplace. We're going to have the shop, and we're not changing the menu. Okay? I said, that's great. But you got to understand, we want you. We want to be able to come here. So you need to tell your regional manager or however your hierarchy is that they can't do the woke stuff. I'm not saying you need to discriminate. If some blue-haired, pink-haired, tattooed, nose ring person comes in, of course you got to serve them. That's their prerogative. That's their right. But don't destroy our kids. Don't destroy our country. Don't take the money we pay you for these meals to destroy our country. If you do, you're gone. I said it to her just like that. She shook her head, said, I understand. So as long as we understand each other, we hope to be coming here for years to come. But understand, if they stray from that, you're done. Okay? It was a pleasant conversation. She was nice. There's one in our area that had a fire that they did remodel. And she said, go see it. I think you're going to like it. She says it's going to be a long time before ours gets it done because it's just a rollout type thing. But Cracker Barrel is a great place if they aren't woke. We called them out. They said they're going to change. Let's now not cut off our nose to spite our face. Let's defend some place that we like, but hold them accountable. Okay? Fair enough? Okay. Just want to share that with you, and I want you to do the same thing. I want you this week, go to Cracker Barrel. Support them. We want to keep them open. Okay? But make it clear to them what they got to do. All right. So we're going to wrap up the podcast. This is one of the shortest ones we've had in quite a while, and I'm happy about that, and I hope you're happy about that. Your job is to tell people about this podcast, to share it everywhere you can. If you have questions, comments, ideas for stories, send it to info@wethepeopleconvention.org. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. We read them. We will reply to you. Mostly tell people about this. And then if you can give, please give. We've had about 20% decline in donations, which happens typically after a presidential election year. But we still got to keep operating. So if you can give, we'd appreciate it if you would. And we've had some new donors, and thank you to you guys. Thank you very much. So I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. I hope you feel informed. I hope you've got an action plan. We'll put it on our podcast page. Okay? And I hope you'll be back with us again next week. Right? In the meantime, enjoy college football, the start of fall, the pretty decent weather. Enjoy your family and friends. Enjoy your freedom. But stand strong. Be loud. Defend our nation. Defend our values. Do not accept the woke. Do not accept it's okay that some more black kids got killed in the community next to us. Demand that Trump send in the troops. Demand that the Democrats do something. Do not accept that they can just bring fentanyl into our country and kill our children. Do not accept that you can poison your food and that's okay. Fight for your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity by sharing information and by speaking out. That's what you got to do. Okay? I really appreciate you taking your time to join us. I look forward to being back with you again next week. You've been listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. May God bless you because God has already blessed America.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight